for joining us for the Guarding Kids Prevention podcast. We're happy to have you today. There's a few things I want to mention right off the bat. We have a couple of things that may interest you. When I'm out in the public, I get a lot of questions about how you can help. So we've designed a program that will help you come in, tour the facility, and also people want to know how they can contribute, and we've made that super easy as well. We have a QR code. I spend about $12 a week on coffee, and to help us, you can do the $12 a month or more if you have it in your heart to do so. It's a real easy way to help contribute to the work we do here at the Children's Advocacy Center, and you can be a big part of that by contributing that $12 monthly. It's our Circle of Care program. All of that information can be found on our website, our Facebook page. So you can please take a look at those. And if you have any questions, contact us. One of the big things that we just started is a tour of the facility on Fridays. You have to register for that just because we expect a lot of collaboration with the community. A lot of people do want to come and see. So please sign up to be one of our guests here on Friday morning so that you can see firsthand what we do here and what it looks like, so you can share that with the community members. Today I'm super excited about our guests. I've known Jessie for a long time. This is Jessie Adamson from Tykes and Teens. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jessie. We're thrilled to have you here. I'm sure a lot of people know Jessie and the work she's done here in the 19th Circuit. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what you're up to now and what led you to get into this work to start with. So
yeah, I appreciate that. Well, thank you for having me, Christy. Yes. I know you and I go way back, so it's really cool to be here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I originally got into the helping field through being a survivor of domestic violence myself. And so as soon as I got out, I was not in this circuit. I was somewhere else, and the services were not up to par. And so I said, I can do that better. And that's what it takes sometimes. Yeah. And so I got into the field, and I was in victim advocacy for 12 years, helping survivors of human trafficking, sexual assault, as well as domestic violence. And that was the bulk of my career until I moved into trauma-informed care education.
The trauma-informed care, a lot of our agencies have had you and your organization and our organizations to help us with that. And our goal is to reduce the trauma on children or trauma survivors by our actions, by our words, by seeing it in a different light so we can have empathy, compassion, and understanding for them. In our work, we have checklists and we have things that we have to do, but the compassion needs to be there and the understanding of behaviors. So with what you're teaching us and out in the community, that's really impactful when it comes to talking with children, talking about the trauma they've been through and how we as adults and professionals can make that easier on a child who has been through sometimes horrific situations, and we don't cause further damage. Do I understand that's basically the goal, is to help community members, help other helping agencies see it through that lens?
Yeah, exactly. So what a lot of people don't realize is that once any human, but especially kids, because of how fast their brains are developing when they're younger, when they go through trauma, their brain state becomes altered. And therefore, they go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fawn is people-pleasing, and that's a trauma response. And so at that point, they can't do any critical thinking. They can't do any learning or acceptance of facts. They can't show respect to others or accept respect from others, and they're offline. All their body is doing is trying to keep them alive, as though an animal is trying to attack them, right? It's like the same thing that we were given innately to save us from the tiger or the bear, right? And so when their brain's offline, as adults, sometimes we're telling them, hey, you know this rule, why aren't you doing it? Or, I've already told you to sit in that seat, why aren't you doing it? And it's because their brains are offline. So as adults, if we can understand how to get their brains back online and bring them into a place of rest and digest or safe and social, then we can start helping them learn. Then we can start helping them to learn coping mechanisms that will benefit them. And so it's really understanding at the end of the day that adverse behavior is just an expression of a need. And as practitioners, it's our job to find out what that need is.
What a fabulous explanation for that. I try to find the words sometimes, and that was one of the best explanations of that I have heard in this work. I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people. One thing I like to say is often the reason behind the behavior will break your heart rather than make you angry.
That's right.
That something is happening. It's not intentional. It's not something that this child is trying to do. So having that understanding with our words, with our actions, the way we treat the child or anybody who's been through that trauma is impactful and powerful. And would you say it helps build that trust? It helps when we come across as compassionate, as engaged, and totally focused on them and the behavior, and through no fault of our own or no intent of our own, not causing more trauma because we're trauma informed now, that builds that relationship and helps with resiliency as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have trainings that really go into depth on these matters, but that's the goal, is to be able to help kids get into that baseline mental state where they're safe and they can think clearly, so that they can learn coping mechanisms, so that when they're adults, they're not all starting from scratch like we were, because this science is only 10, 15 years old, right? So we're just as adults learning how to heal from our trauma with this stuff. And how cool would it have been if we had learned about it when we were little and we had people teach us how to cope and how to do this deep breathing stuff? You know, if we had that in our 20s, where would we be right now? Who knows, right? But these kids do, because they have the science. We have the science. And so the fact that we have it and we can implement it, I really have high hopes for, the future.
I like that, because when I talk about prevention, one of the things that happens in this work is we don't see numbers immediately. For funders, for the community, when we do things like addiction, we can put 10 into a rehab, 8 relapse. So we can judge the system that way on what's happening, what's working, what's not working. With prevention, we can't tell who didn't,
right?
Who wasn't. But I think you're right. Over a long period of time, if we follow this, we can see the decline and be in direct relation to how we're treating it and what we're doing to help these children survive and move through the process early.
And that's a really good point, because when you think about the fact that this science is only 10, 15 years old, and then we know that in that 10 and 15 years, they've come up with the scientific fact, that adverse childhood experiences are like the number one health risk to the population. They know that now. It's not heart disease. It's not cancer. It is having trauma in your childhood that will absolutely overthrow your health more than anything else. And they have that in science. So now that we know that, you're right, it's going to take some time to see that if we can help children heal from these adverse experiences and help them have that resiliency, then will we see the difference? Because unfortunately, science has found that lifespans can be cut short up to 20 years if someone has higher adverse childhood experiences. And so we're literally giving them that life back. We're giving them those opportunities to spend time with their grandbabies, and we're giving them those opportunities to make the world a better place as older people that they didn't have before. And we won't know that until we see it happen, and we're just at the front end of this.
Yes, seeing it manifest itself as they move through the process. And I believe, maybe you can speak on this, that as the quicker we address the trauma, the sooner we address it, the better outcome. So when these children who come through the Advocacy Center have just experienced that trauma, and we come in with our therapy dog to greet them, we have professionals that can help them manage this, that it takes a lot of stigma away from it, and it's immediate. So they don't wait years to manifest problems that need to be addressed, and then we look at what the root cause is, and then it's a trauma. But I think with the work we've done, we find that they appear for addiction problems, they appear for mental health concerns, and we work to address that immediate, what they're showing for. But to dig in a little further and go to the root cause and address that trauma, we could really eliminate a lot of the not only mental health concerns, the addiction concerns, and what you just brought to our attention is the physical manifestation of the trauma on our bodies.
Right.
So the healthcare costs will maybe greatly reduced because of. And Jessie, what I'd like to do is, because a lot of people who don't do this work, they want to see statistics and numbers. I would like to see a cost comparison. Like, what do we spend now to save later? I believe I'll have to really look at the facts on this, that it was $7 to $11. If we spend $7 now, helping people, process their trauma, that will save $11 later. And for us, we just care about the whole person. But for people, they want to know, how can we prove this? How can we show this? So I think that's a number two that over time is going to really show the benefits of what we're doing and all being informed and addressing these children early and often. It's not a one and done. We need to continue to support them. And it's not just family and their immediate circle. The work you're doing is going out into the community, because when these kids appear at another event, at another agency, we are all on the same page. And I think that's going to give kids a sense of familiarity on, we're all doing this for them. We're all in a protective factor for them. And they may not realize it now, but later when they look back, they're going to realize that these people went over and above to really provide the care that they needed. So I think that's impactful as well.
Yeah, I think that many of us who have survived trauma have that person that we may not know their name, we may not remember why we knew them at that time, but for me, it's a social worker in one of the hospitals, and that story, she's just the one. She's the one who said what she had to say and did what she had to do to save my life. And I don't know her name, and I don't know how I probably will never contact her again, but we all have that person. And what's so cool is that we are those people for so many. And what we have to understand is that we may not ever see the person, like, she'll never know I had this conversation with you unless she listens to the podcast, which I hope she does. But the key is that we keep helping people one trauma at a time. And we understand that we're in a world that's full of trauma. It's not just here at Guardians, right? When we're in our neighborhoods and something happens and there's like some kind of catastrophic thing on 95 today, like, things happen, and it's not the things that happen that create the trauma. It's our view of that. It's our experience of that, And so no matter where we are absolutely dealing with survivors of trauma, even if it's Walmart.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
We have to adopt this into every facet of our life.
Yes, and have that understanding of people's behavior. And when we look at older people, we have to have some grace, because they didn't have Google. They didn't even have the bare minimum to research and look, what is happening to me? Why am I reacting this way? And so much has happened during my adult lifespan to make that difference. So I think there's going to be a seismic shift soon, and we're right in the middle of it. So I think that's powerful. And what you had said, I talk about this as well, that I'm in my mid-50s. We'll just leave it at that. And we don't think, we get burned out a little bit and we're going about our day doing the work. But somebody 50 years from now is going to say, there was this lady once, and it's you they were talking about.
That's right.
They don't remember your name. Maybe they were a child and it stuck with them their entire life. So that's happening whether you know it or not. So keep doing your work. Keep doing the good work, because it's making an impact, whether you will be aware, just like you said, just to let them know that years later that person is carrying that with them and moving forward with their life because of an impact that you had.
Yeah.
So I want all of our helpers to know that the work you're doing is so powerful and important. You might not reap the rewards right away, but just know that it is happening, because people like ourselves are here to say and speak on that and let you know just what you meant to us.
Yeah, and even that knowing is going to increase compassion satisfaction, which is where we feel good about our work, which is the key factor to help us not go into burnout, right? To not go into compassion fatigue. So just knowing that is something that's helpful. And so I hope that encourages somebody today. Yeah.
It very much will, because it did with me when I saw the impact that it has later on in life, that it's not a one and done. So that person you're seeing today in your work may even come across as angry, or we have to have deep understanding where those are coming from. And do they have a right to be angry? Yes, they do. Are they angry at us? No. Are the children angry at us? No. They just have, I like what you said, a need to be filled, and they don't have the vocabulary. They don't have the education, the words that we have to express it. So we have to dig in and find it. Mr. Singletary last week with Kids at Hope, we have to be that adult who finds that in the child and brings it out. They all have a gift. They all have something special to offer. But in the middle of trauma, in the middle of processing trauma, that isn't made aware. So if we can bring that to light, encourage that child, know that they have a support system in the community, because it's community based, and anywhere they go, there's teachers who've been trained by you. There's agencies that have been trained by you to look for this. So we can all as a community come together and help people who've been through this and help them survive and continue to be there for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's exciting work we do. It's hard work, but it's exciting work. Let's talk about a little bit about what mental health resources are available for kids and families through your work or any other agencies that you know that could offer this. If anybody's interested in having this training, where could they go? You're with Tykes and Teens. Is that something you would go and help community members or agencies learn more about?
Yeah, absolutely. So Tykes and Teens, the bulk of Tykes and Teens is therapy for kids, which is so cool. And everyone is so trauma informed, and it's such a cool place to work. I'm really grateful to be there. And that's how I know that when kids walk into the therapist's office that they're safe, because I'm safe when I'm there. And you know what I mean? It's safety is everything. It's one of the cornerstones of trauma-informed care. Having said that, I'm on the prevention team, which is a really small pocket of Tykes and Teens. And this is where we go out into the community and we're helping therapists, teachers, foster parents, anybody who will listen, really, that engages with kids about what to look for and what to understand with the brain science. And we keep it very simple because I'll keep it real. I'm a nursing school dropout, so I'm not trying to complicate things, right? We need to know what we need to know to get the job done. And so we keep it very simple, and we help people to understand what it is that we're supposed to be doing. Because I heard you mention earlier that like these kids are crying because they don't know how to get help. And it's so funny to me, and I share this anecdote often in my trainings, that we're taught with infants that if they cry, that they have a need that's under the surface that we need to figure out. They either need fed, burped, changed, or they need to sleep, right? And then somehow somebody told us the falsehood that when we get older and we get upset and emotional, that that's no longer the case. But that never ends. When we're upset and we're emotional, it's because we need one of our basic needs met. That never changes. And so I like drawing it back to the infants and remembering that like what we know innately continues throughout time. And whoever told that lie about like now they're a toddler, now that's not the case, like it's just not true, and we have to unlearn that.
That's powerful. That is powerful to make that realization. We have no words, and we will learn them through your trainings, through different things we go through. But until we have the words, we are just crying out. And one thing that you talked about teachers in school that I found powerful, and I could see the light bulbs going off in the teachers' eyes, because maybe they didn't have the same experiences as the students. So the teacher's super frustrated that this child won't do the work. And when I worked at Dan McCarty, and we had, some meetings, I would bring up the point, maybe that child didn't eat today. Maybe the power's turned off at home. Maybe mom was arrested last night. So are they interested in your math test? Not so much. They need to know how to survive tonight.
That's right.
They need to plan on a safety plan when they get home. If dad wasn't arrested, will he be drinking? Did mom, use today? That's real life.
Yeah.
That's real life in certain pockets of any community. And these are the children that are living that every day.
Exactly. And I think we can all resonate with that if we think about a time that we were incredibly stressed out, right? And then a friend calls us to complain or to even ask a question that seems so trivial. Like this morning, I had a very emotionally verbose morning. And one of my friends texted me and asked me which carpet she should buy for her bathroom. And like in that moment, I was like, and that's how these kids probably feel all the time. They're going through all of this that we don't know about, right? And then we're coming to them and we're telling them to like sit up straight or, to be quiet or to get this task done or to create this craft. And they don't have that part of their brain online. So they're probably looking at us like, you have no idea what's going on right now. And you want me to put this popsicle stick on this popsicle stick? Like it ain't happening, and we can't blame them for that. That's their survivorship, right? And all that to say, I ended up telling her which carpet to get because it was a fun carpet situation. But the key is that we have to really understand where people are coming from and where they're at and not assume they're where we're at.
Yes, on that day. It's that hierarchy of needs. If you're hungry, really nothing else matters. It's a basic survival. If you have fears, you can't concentrate. And are they angry? Yes. Are they angry at you? No. They're not angry at you.
It's not about you.
No. They have things going on. And one thing I learned that's been powerful and kind of eases the initial conversation is not what's wrong with you, what has happened to you. And let them talk about that way instead of putting the blame, victim blaming language and behavior on them. What is wrong with you? they do have a sense something's not right, not necessarily wrong. They don't have the words to explain it,
Right.
but they know what's happened to them, and they can explain that, and that may be the key, the doorway into resolving what's going on with their behavior.
Yeah, and it what you just described is the traditional approach of what's wrong with you that we all grew up with because the science wasn't there. Not nobody's fault. The science just wasn't there, right? And then it moves into what happened to you. That's trauma-informed care. And what we're really trying to get everybody to head towards is healing-centered environment, which is what's right with you. So when we consider that, the example I use a lot is if a child's using hands to get people away from them, not acceptable, right? We're not supposed to use our hands for anything but kind things. But that child is also trying to preserve one of their basic needs in that moment, which is safety. Right? So if instead we can say, what's wrong with you? Why are you hitting people? Or what happened? Why are you hitting people? What we really want to do is get to the point in our trauma-informed practice that we can say, hey, I see you pushing people away with your hands right now. And I know you're trying to keep yourself safe. I can see that. You're doing a good job trying to take care of yourself. Let's talk about another way we can do that without using our hands. See the difference? That's what we're looking for.
That's powerful. And that's describes it in a nutshell, basically what the results we want from the way we ask, the way we approach children who are in crisis. That above all really describes, and we can feel it ourselves if we were approached that way. Even as adults in our job, if our boss were to say, what's going on with you, instead of why aren't you, it would come across very differently, and it would make me be aware of my actions and a way to make it more appropriate, socially appropriate. And I have found children who were middle school who, once they had these realizations, they were a little angry. It's like, why hasn't anybody mentioned this?
Yep. Almost
embarrassed for their past behaviors because out of ignorance, and nobody stopped and said, by the way. Yes, and they are past where they should be in those behavior, those milestones with growth and personal development, but they've not had the opportunity for anybody to redirect that and identify it so that they could address it differently.
And to understand what's going on when we go into fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, because it's a scary feeling. If there are any trauma survivors listening, they know that when you go into that space, you don't know yourself, you don't know your own body, you're not in control of anything. It's not a fun place to be, right? And so these kids are getting into these places, and our job is to help them come back to that baseline, and we can do that through educating them, right, at an age-appropriate level. I'll never forget when I was first educated on the fact that, I tell the story sometimes in my training, so it might be a repeat for some of you, but it's like my way of remembering what this feels like. But I had just left my abuser, moved in with my parents and my son, and I had business cards sitting on a desk. I went back in to get the business cards a few hours later, and they were gone. So I saw red. I yelled at my mom. I said things I don't remember. And I remember her face. And I remember her reaching down to a drawer right below where I left them. And she was like, here's your business cards. And we were both just like really freaked out. And neither of us really knew what was happening. And it wasn't until I talked to my therapist, which is why therapy is so important, where she reminded me, because she's been collecting all these clues for me along the years, right? And she said, didn't your abuser used to hide your stuff from you to punish you? And I was like, there it is. And so sometimes especially with kids, I was a full grown adult when that happened and I didn't know what was going on. So kids don't even know what's going on. So while you're seeing them rage, while you're seeing them, do all these things that we see as trauma responses, they're terrified. And we have to remember that. And if we approach it as such, it will be a different game, I really think.
I like that. The anger is not aggressive anger. It's
self-preservation.
Terror. Yes.
Self-preservation.
Just that, if we get that word out to any child that seems to be having some behavior and we're annoyed or frustrated, if we can reframe it and look at it through a different lens, it helps us as well. Nobody wants to be angry at their child all the time. Nobody wants to be that. We want to have a nice, calm interactions with our child. But if there's something there that's not allowing it, we need to dig in and correct that or work around it instead of that constant of years of just this back and forth that's never addressed. And to look at it through that lens is powerful.
Yeah, and just being able to see them, right? Because sometimes the puzzle's tough to figure out. My son is almost 13, and he is a trauma survivor, and early on, but with the brain, early on doesn't matter, it still affects, so he is a trauma survivor. And there are times that I'll be going back and forth with him about something that I think is simplistic, and then I remember trauma-informed care, and then I just kind of, what are you feeling right now? Even if he can't answer me, that changes the energy in the room, because now he knows I'm trying to see him. And what do humans on this earth want more than being seen? And that can absolutely disarm somebody who is in fight, flight, freeze, fawn, is just being there, being that safe person, and wanting to see them.
I absolutely love that, because I think you're right. You bring up a good point. As with family members, we do our work, but we also need to bring it home for our own families. Sometimes that's that disconnect, and I just like what you brought up. We're out here doing this work, but our families, we have to see ourselves as the way we would teach it to someone else. And I think I'm going to actually bring that home as well. I made some realizations as you were saying that I talk about this all day with my work, but what am I doing at home with my family that would also bring that same peacefulness, that same, that would resonate with anybody. And I think that is amazing. That's why I was so grateful to have you here with us today, because I knew you would bring such incredible insights.
Thank you.
Your passion just resonates with anybody that has been around you or been in this work or has experienced what you bring.
I appreciate that.
Jessie and I know each other from work we did back in the day. We worked a year on a trauma-informed framework for our classes for parents, and it was incredibly detailed. We wanted to make sure survivors at every level, and we would bounce it back and forth between among a bunch of professionals with an agency that we worked for to make absolute sure that we were doing the very best thing for moms, for families, for kids growing up, and to see the light bulbs go off in some of the participants who were involved in this. And it's a difficult subject, but we didn't make it toxic positive, but made it understandable. And we even took on this at our agency, color schemes. We made sure that we are not happy, because that's not fair either. It's not happy right at this moment, and something terrible has happened. So we can't just happy up, just hear it. Tomorrow's going to be great, rainbows and sunshine. We have to sit with them for a moment and not explode with happiness and positivity and dismiss what they're currently going through. I learned a lot going through that process with professionals like Jessie and others that we worked with for a very long time. Jessie has multi-layers of care that she gives to the community. She's helped so much financially with participants of domestic violence who needed some help. Nobody has sat with them to say, hey, here's a credit score. Hey, budgeting, which I personally benefited from.
I did too. I benefited from my own role there. That was amazing. It was such a cool thing to have the ability to get in there and really research how to do that. And you're right. It's also coupled with financial trauma, right? Yeah. So that's the thing, is that when something is traumatizing to us, we go into that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and then we can't approach it with a critical thinking lens. So it was the same thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can see how it fits into so many aspects of our life and what it means. Even here, we don't have pictures of our lovely family because not everybody has that, and that's not fair.
That's right.
And to help them buy into what we're doing, we have to meet them where they are and not be here.
Yeah. And I really appreciate what you said also about having empathy and compassion for others. So the definition of compassion is the desire to help others hurt less, right? And then Brene Brown is my favorite when it comes to what empathy is. And that's if someone's down in the bottom of a well crying about how dark it is. Empathy is crawling down into that well and sitting in there with them, rather than being up at the opening of the hole and being like, hey, you all right down there? You know, and she has a whole video about that on YouTube. It's so cool. And when I understand that's our job, is to feel with and to not have that toxic positivity, right? And be up there eating our sandwich on the top of the well, like, you're all right. No, our goal is to be down there with them and to be in the dark, scary places with them. And then to make sure that we get out of those dark, scary places and that we bring them with us.
That's important, because I think my mistake coming into this work early on was I'm going to fix everybody. I'm going to rescue them. And my ignorance in the beginning, before I was educated, was it's going to be fine. You just happy up and have a positive attitude, and you're just sad all the time. Just go outside and get some simple as that. Mm-hmm. And I really learned a lot about how that's not fair, how to address it differently, how to look at where they are, meet them where they are, and maybe they will get there, but with support and care.
Right. One of my favorite scenes from any Disney movie is from Inside Out, where Bing Bong's wagon has just gone down into like the abyss, right? And so he's sitting there crying, and Joy is like, come on, it's okay, get up, we'll go on an adventure. And and Bing Bong's like, not okay. And then Sadness comes over and is like, oh, you really loved that wagon, didn't you? Right? And like that kind of, like, that must really be sad. I bet you and Riley had some great adventures on that wagon, and really just sitting in that well with him. And I was like, Disney gets it. Exactly. And that's what we have to do, right? Sometimes we have to be Sadness and not Joy, and that's okay, and that's healing.
That is, because we can show that it's normal.
Yeah.
And you're expected to be there right now. Yeah. And I'm going to be here with you.
That's
and
right.
and help you maybe make the next step to moving on, or we can sit here as long as you need. There's no rush.
That's right.
And that is huge and powerful for anybody, because I don't think they've received that anywhere else. Mm-hmm. They do get the toxic positivity from friends. A person gave an example. She had asthma, and there's like, oh, why do you have asthma? There's plenty of air out there.
That's a great parallel. Yeah, exactly.
It's full of air. So why can't you just be happy? It's happy out here.
That's a great parallel.
Yes.
And that's what we're dealing with. And people don't realize that it's as significant and as unchangeable, like as an illness, right? Until we get the medicine, until we get the coping mechanisms. And so just saying, hey, feel better, it's like, thanks. Not helpful. Sure, but we're learning the work, and this community is doing a fantastic job. I'm so proud that I'm going into places to train, and they're already doing the things. They're already having the calming corners. They're already using trauma-informed care, and then we get to build from there. So our community is actually doing a really great job, and it's so cool to see.
We are amazing here, and just my work in other places, they really want to use as a model here. We've got so many things plugged in to help anybody that needs it on any level that they need, and professionals like Jessie kind of making their way through different areas, different agencies, different work, different groups of people to get that word out there is huge. And I can't thank you enough for being here with us today to help us understand that. You've given me some really powerful insight like you always do. And that's why I was grateful and really looking forward to having you on to help share with the community what we can do, how we can handle this, how we can see and address kids and their trauma and be that important person that they may be talking about 30, 40 years later.
That's right.
To someone, and they will say, there was this lady once. Yep. I don't know who she was, but she did this and this decades after it happened. And you as a community are doing that now every day, whether you're aware of it or not. You're the Jessie. You're that person that's sticking out. You're Jessie's social worker who said something to her that impacted her to this day. Mm-hmm. So keep doing that good work. It's needed. It's valuable. And like I said, as we wrap up, there's things you can do to help with the kids, the children here in our area that have gone through this trauma. You can come visit us. You can get firsthand insight on what happens here, what happens with the kids as they move through, how you can help us financially make an impact on their care, how you can make the community aware of what you see here, how it works, and how you can get involved to help make this better for all our children here in St. Lucie County, Martin County, the whole entire 19th Circuit. There's some links that you can look into on our website, our Facebook page, underneath the podcast here. Please get involved and join, and we'll be happy to have you come and do a tour